Level 1 Computex 2019 coverage is made possible by ASRock. Yes, ASRock has sponsored our travel to come out to Computex. So I want to say thanks to ASRock. They've got a lot of new, exciting products here at Computex, not the least of which is X570. All of their X570 motherboards in the full lineup. We're going to have a video on that. You should check that out. There's a link in the description. Definitely check out their products. They've also got the Steel Legend, the Z390. So, if you're Team Red or Team Blue, it doesn't really matter. There's something there for you no matter what. Although, things are getting kind of interesting at this Computex. Also, I want to say a big thanks to Team Group. Team Group, they've got a lot of new, exciting SSDs and RAM and all kinds of stuff. And they also sponsored our travel out to Computex. So all of our Computex coverage for 2019 are thanks to those guys, because they made it so we could get here, which is really awesome. Now, Team Group is pretty exciting. We've got a full video of all the stuff that they've got going on at their booth. I've been using Team Group for many years, all the way back to I think the DDR2 or DDR3 days. Check them out. There's a link in the description. Listen, Computex 2019 might be the weirdest Computex that I've ever been to, ever, for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is that, good lord, there's a lot of insanity going on. But Intel's kind of flying under the radar. I feel like Intel needs their own video just so we cover everything. And there's a lot more to discuss in the grander context of things. But like I say, I think the Intel keynote is a little bit overshadowed by some of the other goings on at Computex, but it's not really that way. I mean, there's actually a lot of cool stuff in Intel's press event and some of the stuff that they've got going on the show floor. It's mostly around thin and light notebooks, but there's some cool stuff that's flying under the radar, and we can take a look at some of that in ASRock's booth. And whenever I ramble or go off topic, well, you can just look at the modded machines that they had on display, because there were some really cool ones, especially that steampunk one that is probably can't get enough B-roll of, and there's not enough rambling for me to really, go in there. Well, anyway, Optane 11. So Optane finally, in an M.2 format, combined with NAND flash. So you get the advantages of NAND flash storage plus Optane. And this is probably what it should have been from the beginning. The 32 gig Optane drives made sense if you were using mechanical storage, but the price of mechanical storage, even though it was falling rapidly, wasn't falling quite as rapidly as NAND flash storage. So you could pretty quickly get a large capacity flash drive that was fast enough. Yeah, sure, not as fast as Optane, but fast enough for whatever you might want to do, game storage, things like that. So I don't think that mechanical hard drives plus 32 gig Optane really worked out the way that Intel had intended. But now we have, a later generation device that combines Optane and NAND flash on one single device. Now, the devices that ASRock were showing off, they were topping out at about 2.5 gigabytes per second, but that's a little misleading. I mean, if you look at a Samsung, 970 Pro, it's going to be about 3.5 gigabytes per second. Samsung's done a lot of stuff with their cache and onboard memory and onboard single level cell flash to try to claw back some of the performance loss from quad level cell flash memory. This solution gives you a lower latency because you've got the Optane for the lower latency in the cache and all the other stuff, but you still get the advantages of cheap capacity with those quad level cell NAND flash storage options. And it's all on one single device. Instead of combining multiple devices, like you buy this device from Intel and then you buy your bulk storage from somebody else, you get it all on one nice, neat little package. And Optane really is, 3D X-Point memory, it really is an engineering masterpiece. And I think ultimately it'll probably be cheaper to manufacture than flash, because it seems like it's a kind of phase change memory, and that should be cheaper to manufacture than regular flash memory. So it's sort of an interesting situation in terms of the things that are going on at Computex and some of the other more interesting interesting technologies. Although at the same time, it is interesting what Samsung has done with only NAND, quote unquote, only NAND flash. There's some RAM and some other stuff in there too. Just the software special sauce to really bring that performance out and be able to have, super high performance flash. Now, I think Optane, especially the new Optane M.2 devices in a RAID configuration, I think that's far more interesting, because you're still working at that queue depth 1. That 3.5 gigabytes per second is really, once the drive is fully operational with lots of outstanding read and write requests, which you do get in some types of workloads like video editing, but most workloads are queue depth 1 or very low queue depths, meaning that the computer is just like, go get this, okay, now that you got that, go get this other thing, okay, now that you've got that, go get this other thing. So it's only requesting one thing at a time. And the faster the machine is at queue depth 1, the more snappy and responsive it will feel. And Optane is a great technology for maintaining that low latency and that snappiness and responsiveness. And there are ways to measure it, but companies like Samsung have done a lot to try to overcome those latency limitations in software with software solutions, even though they don't have something like Optane on their devices. So the keynote and the press event from Intel was also pretty interesting. They actually, 10 nanometers is shipping, and I think that flies under the radar of a lot of people in the tech industry, is that 10 nanometers is actually shipping. It's a thing. I think Anantech were one of the first people to get the Chinese 10 nanometer laptop. Well, now we're on Ice Lake. And so Ice Lake is a volume device. They showed off a lot of thin and light mobile portable devices at the Intel keynote. And Intel's got this new thing that they call Project Athena. They were looking around and they were looking at the machines that partners were building. And they're saying, we have the technology to build something that is both thin and light and also no compromises in terms of performance. They're seeing too many people in the industry. They intimated they were seeing too many people in the industry that are building like a thin and light notebook, but that has good battery life, but the performance is kind of terrible. Or a real powerhouse laptop, but lugging it around like a brick is not a lot of fun for a lot of people. So Athena is 9 hours of battery life plus 16 hours of battery life in terms of like video playback, thin and light, but no compromises on performance and some other requirements that they've put forth. So they're asking their partners, it's like, okay, if you build a notebook that is Project Athena compliant, then you're going to have this really amazing mobile, no compromises experience. And they had Acer on stage and other stuff like that. They also debuted the 9900KS, and it's like, okay, the 9900KS, no, the 10 nanometer stuff is not for desktop at all. The 9900KS is basically a bend 9900K. It's 5 gigahertz all-core overclock out of the box. And that's nice, but if you just do a little bit of overclocking, you will get the 9900K to run at 5 gigahertz all-core. I've never had a 9900K that doesn't run at 5 gigahertz. Some of them require ridiculous voltages, and you've really got to manage the heat in that scenario. But by and large, the 9900K all-core overclock at 5 gigahertz is not unreasonable. But Intel also debuted the Performance Maximizer, and this kind of reminds me of what the competition is doing in their hardware, in that it fine-tunes and finds exactly how your specific hardware is able to overclock. And for their demonstration system, which was a 9900K, they were able to get it to do an all-core overclock of 5.2 gigahertz. Now, I don't know what they were using for cooling. They kind of light on technical details, which is really the theme for the rest of the Intel keynote. But it actually was running at 5.2 gigahertz. That software, the Intel Maximizer, is going to be available in July. So I'm sure we'll see a lot more testing and a lot more interesting stuff with that coming down the pike. Now, ASRock also was showing off Wi-Fi 6, and Wi-Fi 6 factored into the Intel keynote. Now, a lot of the new Intel boards from ASRock, they have built-in Wi-Fi 6 or the option for Wi-Fi 6. You get the M.2 module, you can upgrade, you can replace that, and that's promising, insanely high speed. It used to be, I think, 802.11x, and now it's just Wi-Fi 6. Insanely high wireless speeds, low latency. The show floor, the access points, just too much. It was impossible to actually get a good demo of Wi-Fi 6. And I don't know if that's because the shortage of access points or anything like that. It was just screenshots of how the actual performance was. So ASRock's also got the Steel Legend, and the Steel Legend is really set up for the 9900K, the 9900KS. It's not the most expensive board. It's not like the super flagship board, but it is set up to be able to deliver the power and stability requirements of 5 gigahertz across all cores. So it's nice to see ASRock basically good to go as far as Optane, Wi-Fi 6, which is available in a huge number of their motherboards at this point, as well as good Optane support and that kind of stuff, as well as support for future processors like the 9900KS. The rain today really was pretty intense. It kind of sets the mood overall. There's a lot of cool stuff on display at ASRock's booth, but this I think is the most succinct rundown of the Intel keynote. Now, things that didn't really factor too much in the Intel keynote is like the whole 5G thing. There were Intel advertisements for 5G at the airport, but 5G is not really a thing from Intel, I think, anymore. So things were a little awkward. Oh, Ryan Shrout at the congratulations, Ryan Shrout used to be part of PC Perspective, now with Intel. He debuted the 9900KS ahead of the actual Intel keynote at Computex, so that was pretty cool. Oh, and I almost forgot. Wi-Fi, some of the Wi-Fi and Thunderbolt, but Thunderbolt was the more interesting one. That's moving on chip. So the 10 nanometer stuff is not just a shrink, but they've actually moved Thunderbolt on chip. They moved some AI acceleration on chip. They had an AI demo where they were upscaling the trees, and that's fine. We've seen those types of algorithms, but they're hardware assisted. So these kinds of things, it's really interesting to me that they're putting all of that on silicon these days, especially the 10 nanometer. So maybe with the, they mentioned that they're going to do the refresh of the Core X series desktop refresh in the fall. No details, but maybe if we see some of those instruction sets for AI acceleration in the fall, things will get interesting. I don't know. Until then, I'm Wendell. This is Level 1. I'm signing out. I'll probably be in the forums, although the jet lag and Computex, and I've got a lot of other stuff to do. Twitter's not bad. Big thanks to our patrons for paying for my food, a lot of it. Well, about half of it I paid for. So our patrons help bring us here too. So Wendell, I'm signing out, and I'll see you later.